Helldivers, the Python Commando's premium warbond has arrived. And while it's packed with great weapons and armor sets, there's one stratagem in particular that's got everyone super hyped.
It's been requested and talked about for the longest time, but finally, High Command has heard our patriotic prayers. The M-1000 Maxigun is Super Earth's definitive answer to crowd control.
But of course, with great power comes great responsibility. Today we'll take a closer look at the M-1000 Maxigun and provide you with some tactical advice on how to get the most out of this highly democratic weapon.
To better appreciate the M-1000 Maxigun, let's first take a closer look at file footage of the M-134 Minigun. Designed all the way back in 1960 and put into service just 3 years later during the Vietnamese War, the M-134 is a scaled-down version, and hence minigun, of the 20mm M61 Vulcan, which was designed about a year after the end of World War II in 1946.
The US military used helicopters as one of the main methods for transporting troops and equipment across the dense jungles of Vietnam. The problem was when they slowed to a hover in order to land, Hueys were particularly vulnerable to small arms fire and RPGs. And while these birds were fitted with single-barrel machine guns to repel attackers, they were prone to overheating and jamming, making them all but useless in the event of heavier resistance being encountered.
To solve this problem, General Electric stepped in, creating a rotary barrel electrically powered weapon that uses 7.62 by 51mm NATO ammunition and could fire at a rate between 2,000 and 6,000 rounds per minute. Before long, miniguns were being mounted on everything from Hughes OH-6 Caiuses to Douglas A-1 Sky Raiders. And though miniguns had a variable rate of fire, most specifications recommended setting them to between 3,000 and 4,000 rounds per minute.
The so-called lightweight version of the M134 allegedly weighed 41 pounds and was 31.6 inches in length, with each barrel measuring 22 inches. Now, to clarify, firing this weapon without it being mounted to an aircraft was basically impossible. You can imagine that in spitting out a constant stream of bullets, the M134 kicked like a donkey and had to be belt-fed. In short, if you were able to hold and fire one, you would need to stand still and would only be able to operate it for a brief moment before the weapon pushed you back or knocked you on your ass.
Indeed, Interloper. And yes, for fans of the 1987 film Predator, the minigun used by Jesse Ventura is indeed real but uses a lower rate of fire, around 1,250 rounds a minute, and is very unrealistic in terms of how using a handheld minigun would actually work. But in spite of these challenges, the Ministry of Defense has answered your calls, Helldivers, and thus we present to you the M-1000 Maxigun.
In improving on the design of the M134, or at the very least altering it to make it something a solitary Helldiver can handle without too much trouble, the M1000 Maxigun features a design with high recoil, but not so much that it can't be operated while standing still. Of course, the main thing to keep in mind with the Maxigun is that it can only be used while stationary. In this sense, it's like a mobile sentry or turret, but only when you aren't firing it.
Yep, even Helldivers won't be able to walk and fire the Maxigun. This means you'll need to be pretty selective when using it, especially if you're diving solo. As long as you can keep a decent distance between yourself and the enemy, the Maxigun should take care of most of your problems.
The good news with the Maxigun is that you don't have to physically reload it, as all the ammo is stored in a backpack that you must carry with you at all times. However, the Maxigun is only rated at AP3, meaning it can punch through light and medium armored enemies, but nothing heavier. We know that many of you are not happy about this, but if you had to operate the Maxigun with that additional kick and using armor-penetrating rounds, it would have to be mounted to something. Sorry, I don't make the rules when it comes to the laws of physics, Helldivers.
If mobility and heavy armor penetration are a non-negotiable for you, we recommend you choose the MG206 heavy machine gun instead. You can fire it, very inaccurately while moving, and it has an AP of 4. Just remember that it only comes with 2 spare ammo drums and reloading it takes 5.5 seconds, and you can't move while reloading.
And if mobility isn't an issue at all and you want that armor pen, we instead recommend the EMG101 HMG emplacement. Sure, it doesn't move at all, and it can be destroyed easily by enemies, but it provides a constant rate of fire, has heavy armor penetration, and comes with 300 rounds. If you use one of these correctly, they make a huge difference, especially in defense missions. But if you fumble the call-in or put it in the wrong position, it's a huge waste of a stratagem.
The good news with the Maxigun is that because it has medium armor penetration, it's pretty versatile across all fronts. But naturally, there are some important considerations depending on the faction you find yourself up against. When it comes to the bugs, you'll find it very easy to wipe out large swathes of light and medium enemies. But there's a catch.
The bugs are pretty quick, and some of them, like hunters and pouncers, can close the gap in an instant. In other words, mobility is a major factor to consider, and in testing the Maxigun on its own, it does more than a decent job on lower difficulty missions. However, as soon as you go higher, bug breaches become more frequent and the bugs more numerous and aggressive.
And while firing, especially if you're standing, it's not the easiest weapon to aim. It's essentially a bullet hose, one you have to handle with extreme care. If you find a swarm of shriekers bearing down on you, you're better off with another weapon, as firing the Maxigun into the skies above with any level of accuracy is nigh impossible.
A squad of Helldivers with Maxiguns will definitely have a much easier time taking out the bugs, but when it comes to heavier enemies like Bile Titans, Chargers, and Dragon Roaches, then the Maxigun is just not a viable option at all. And remember, you have to carry the ammo backpack with you all the time, so if you're thinking about using the Maxigun with a warp, hover, or jump pack, forget about it. If you use this weapon, you will have to hoof it pretty much all the time.
The Maxigun is a very decent option against the bugs, but be very selective when using it. If you build a solid loadout around it, you should survive even the toughest missions. But if you want to lean on the Maxigun for every occasion, then I'm afraid you're a little delusional.
Alright, so how does the Maxigun fare against the bots? In some ways better than the bugs, but in others, a lot worse. That's because the bots have some of the most heavily armored enemies imaginable. So if you come up against Hulks, War Striders, and Factory Striders, the Maxigun simply will not cut it.
So bots are a little slower than bugs, which means wiping out troopers, berserkers, and devastators is relatively easy, especially if you know where to aim. The trouble is that bots are ferried in via dropship. So, as we mentioned with Shriekers, you'll want to refrain from trying to hit aerial units with any kind of accuracy.
The other issue is that you have to stop and fire the Maxigun, which makes you a sitting duck when it comes to ranged attacks from the clankers. Yet again, mobility is a major factor, so if you find yourself surrounded by hordes of bots, you'll want to use other stratagems or fall back to cover. In all honesty, the Maxigun shines most against medium enemies, particularly berserkers, but only as long as you can stay out of range.
Owing to the fact that the bots employ gunships and dropships, the Maxigun is probably least effective against the clankers as a whole. Still, kneeling or going prone does help, and it is very appealing not to have to reload your weapon. We don't really see it as a staple for Helldivers on the Automaton front, but again, if you can make it work, then all power to you.
And now, here's where things get interesting. Because of how the squids work, the Maxigun is probably one of the best support weapons you can use against them. In our tests, it absolutely shreds through voteless and flesh mobs and makes short work of overseers of every persuasion, even the elevated variety if you're careful enough.
With the exception of most parts of Harvesters and Leviathans, the squids don't really go much farther than medium armor. Of course, they do have energy shields and are made up of units that are damage sponges. But with the Maxigun's high rate of fire and ammo capacity, it's a very solid choice against the Illuminate.
It's obviously not a hard and fast rule, but the Maxigun does seem to make the most sense build-wise when it comes to these tentacle tyrants. With practice, you can fire controlled bursts from the Maxigun, so if you want to conserve a little ammo and improve your accuracy, this is a pretty good approach. Needless to say, we don't recommend it against Watchers or Stingrays, unless you've got no choice.
In some ways, you can think of the Maxigun as having the fire rate of the Stalwart on the highest RPM with the armor pen of the machine gun minus the mobility and accuracy. If you master it against the squids, there's a good chance you'll rise to become one of the greatest Helldivers ever.
Well, Helldivers, that's it for this briefing on the M-1000 Maxigun. We know many of you are raring to try it out, and if you've had the chance to wield one, what do you think of it? Any tips? Let us know in the comments.
Like and subscribe and sign up for a membership today. With your generosity and commitment, the work of the SES can continue and we can give more back to you. Click the join button after subscribing and be part of the greatest community in the history of the Federation.
And don't forget to grab your gear from superearthsalute.store. Our Christmas collection is now available and will be all the way to the end of December, so act now while you still have time. That's all for today, troops. Until next time, stay forever liberated and never ever surrender. For Super Earth and democracy.